Hola, DevOps compañeros. Hey, I'm Jochen, the Monospace Mentor. Welcome to my office hour. I'm back. I know I don't do live streams that often anymore. It's just a dip at the moment, and maybe I'll get online a little bit more in the future. But office hour seems to be still important to myself, and that's why we are doing it today on this Good Friday. And office hour means you ask questions, I try and come up with answers about DevOps, software engineering, system administration, Linux stuff, open source in general, career questions. If you have anything that comes to mind that you would like to ask someone who has a few years of experience in the space, then you are at the right place. Simply go to mspc.sh/officehour and you can enter your question there. I can see it, I can get it on screen, and I'll definitely do my best to answer it. So, welcome everyone. Welcome Balthasar. Thank you so much for your subscription. 14 months, man. There might come a day where I'll ask you to stop subscribing because it makes me feel old, but today is not that day. NeoQC joining us as well. Hello, hello, hello. I'm really psyched to do another office hour. I just recorded a screencast about my whole recording setup here for my creator community, of which I am a member. I'm not talking about the server room, which is my own community for DevOps people. And if you are interested in a friendly, inclusive community where you can grow, then the server room is definitely a good place to check out. You can support me financially by getting a paid subscription, but there's a free subscription as well. So go and check out the serverroom.sh. And yeah, Fullesnabel joining us as well. Hello. Good Friday to you. Yeah, so office hour means I'll try and answer your questions. If you don't ask any questions, I have to rely on simply drinking my coffee here, which is also quite nice. I like vibe hanging out much better than vibe coding. But if you have a question, post it to mspc.sh/officehour. It'll get you to my Q&A board. You don't have to log in. You don't have to leave any email address or anything. You can simply go and enter your question there. And we'll get it on screen so everyone can see what I'm talking about. For example, it says you got a bit of Rich Hickey look today. I have no idea who Rich Hickey is, but I'll have to take your word for it. He's the closure guy. Okay, that's definitely not an unflattering comparison then. When I looked in the mirror earlier today, I thought, yeah, I look like the hairy guy for hairy situations. That's pretty much it. How is everyone? I'm doing great. This week has been pretty rainy, so I didn't get outside that much. But it's much worse for the relatives that have been visiting us this week because they really picked the wrong week. Oh dear. We had great sunshine the week before, and as it looks, next week will be brilliant sunshine as well. And so they just picked the 1 week in between where it kept raining basically constantly. I'm so sorry. And I mean, they made the best of it, and we definitely had some good times together. But yeah, I can see how Ireland sometimes gets its reputation, but it's really a very subjective impression because yeah, there are a few weeks during the year where it really, really rains and pours. But most of the time, when it says it'll rain today, it'll probably be just a bit of drizzle for 20 minutes or something. So Looking forward to next week. Also looking forward to next week because karate class is going to pick up again. We won't have any class today for holiday reasons, and the same goes for Monday as well. So I'll have to go for almost 2 weeks without karate class, and that can't stand. I need to find something that I'll do later today, and if it's just flexibility exercises or stuff like that. I am completely dependent on having regular karate classes. For example, says in Norway we are very Christian, so we have Thursday to Monday off. It's basically the same in Germany, where at least Good Friday is a holiday, and Easter Monday as well. Here in Ireland, strangely enough, we don't have many Catholic holidays. Monday is going to be a bank holiday, but today is a normal work day. And I don't mind. I had to do a few things anyway. We have a server that, strangely enough, doesn't come up with SSH, which is pretty bad if you want to maintain a server remotely. I asked the data center to plug a KVM in, and found out that SSH couldn't bind to its network address, and therefore didn't come up. I simply restarted it from the console, and it came up because the network was up by that time. I have no idea why SSH is trying to come up before the network interface is, which is completely strange, and it's the only machine that behaves that way. So we'll have to look into that a little bit more. Thankfully now we have SSH access again until we reboot that machine, so there will be opportunity to debug this, but it's really, really strange. It's something that I haven't seen in years, and maybe there was some manual change or something that is now getting in the way. I have no idea. But yeah, that's what we are dealing with on the ops side of things. So if you have any operations questions, how to run Linux services, how to do whatever with Linux, how to self-host your own website, stuff like that. If you have any questions about this, feel free to post them to mspc.sh/office hour. The link is in chat as well, and I'll get it out once more for you, because that's why I'm here. I'm not here to probably drink coffee, although I'm very happy to do so. Use the time that we have to ask your questions. Bethesda says, I'm doing all right, trying to make sure I get some outside time every day to move and improve the mood. That's so essential. Yeah, I'm definitely using the next opportunity when it stopped raining to go outside as well. It helps so much with thinking about stuff and simply finding your balance again. It's so important. Please make sure to go outside, people. First now shares, I've been programming x86 assembler for 2 days now, only to find out the FPU is a bit slow on DOSBox, so I probably should rewrite to fixed point. Yeah, I guess a fixed point arithmetic will always be faster, regardless of if you're using an emulation or not. So if you can go without floating point stuff, that's definitely what I would recommend as well. Bethesda says, time to sniff dmessage. Yeah, I think that's where I'm going to start as well. I didn't have much time between lunch break and my stream here to debug things, and when I was able to get OpenSSH or SSHD up and running again, I left it at that. Hopefully the machine won't reboot by itself, so we'll have opportunity to check it out, and dmessage will definitely be one of the places which I'm going to investigate. Bethesda also says, slow FPU, just like the good old days. The good old days were when we didn't have an FPU, when you had to get an 82, 87 to even do floating point arithmetic. First Naba says, on GPU, floating points are usually quick. Integer math can be very slow. I read. Wait, what? Oh, interesting. I haven't looked into that, but yeah, I guess all the vector arithmetic is probably going to be in floating point. Yeah, makes sense. And in that case, as a GPU designer, I wouldn't probably put much effort into integer as well. But now is working on a 256 byte demo. I can't but repeat myself. I'm always amazed and astonished and in awe what is possible for people like you to put into a few bytes of code. And it's so much fun to see what comes out of it. And I agree with Balthazar, 256 bytes. That's a hell of a target, it is. But I see these things all the time. I mean, those 1K demos that Fullesnabel and others have been doing, I mean, 1K isn't much either. I mean, 256 bytes is just a quarter of that again, but still, it's so amazing. 8-byte demos for CX? You mean the CX Spectrum? 8-byte demos. I'll have to look in. What? Wait, 8 bytes? That's just 2 opcodes with payload. What? Huh? Mind blown. Mind blown. Napalm Codes, hello! Asking, couldn't you just represent the ints as floating points for the GPU? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, yeah, of course, we could represent them as .0. Something .0. But the thing is, if you are coding as in machine code, representing floats and handling floats is much more convoluted than integers, of course, because of the way floating point numbers are stored in memory. So if you can get away with just handling integers, that is, yeah, I would expect from my little experience that handling floating point is 5 times as complicated than handling integers. That reminds me that I need to get back to my computer in Ruby project. A while ago I found that repository again and dabbled a little bit and did a lot of refactoring as well. And it's just so much fun to be able to model logic circuits in Ruby and combine them into more complex structures like flip-flops or registers or memory cells and things like that. So I definitely want to set aside some time to work on that project again, because it's really amazing. I'm not sure how far I'll get before things are getting really slow, because I basically have to change every little bit in my machine for each and every operation, and I guess simulating that down to the logical circuits, to NAND gates basically, will probably become slow at one point, but I haven't reached that point yet, so I'm very curious how far I can drive this and see how it works. That's something we could do on a live stream. I'm not sure why I am becoming so much reluctant to live streams. There must be something in the back of my mind that keeps me from doing them. Maybe it's imposter syndrome or something along these lines. Finding something that is really fun and where I can feel competent is probably going to be something that will get me back to live coding. And that Ruby computer or that Ruby logic simulator could be one of the projects that suit quite well for that. Full posted a link to a 16-byte ZX demo. I will take a look at that later, because I'm really, I mean, yeah, I don't think I should expect a lot from that, 16 bytes, but I'll probably be surprised anyway. For example, did you play the game Turing Complete? It's a game where you construct a computer from NAND gates. Yeah, that's basically what I'm doing in Ruby at the moment. Some people even reconstructed the 8086 in the game. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. Turing Complete. Okay. Wow. The story in the game is that you've been kidnapped by aliens and have to show you are sentient by constructing a computer. I think that's not a good test, though, because only the more capable computer scientists will be able to survive. I guess that's the whole goal of these aliens. Construct a society of computer scientists. And now that I'm saying that out loud, I'm absolutely terrified. The aliens don't eat sentient life. They are not sure about humans yet. Well, but I could imagine that humans are quite tasty. And yeah, there's probably tastier humans than computer scientists, because most of them are either pretty overweight or pretty skinny. So I can see why they won't eat them. Anyway, this is all fun, but hey, I'm here to answer questions. Isn't there anyone who'd like to ask a question? If you have a question around DevOps in general, be it on the dev side about design things, or and by that I mean something like object-oriented design or code design, architecture, ops stuff like how do I get Apache running, or why is the LAMP stack still around, things like that. Ask them at mspc.sh/office hour. Let's post that one more time. Oh, does the panel work? Yes, it does. See, we could do it this way as well. Okay, just noticed that we are going to have an ad break in about 2 minutes' time. Maybe saying it out loud makes me remember it better, so I just don't keep rambling into the ad break. I'm out of coffee. We do have a question. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Here we go. You're a while into the world of using immutable Linux on the desktop. Would you consider using immutable Linux on the server? And if so, do you have a distro you'd like to try? Yeah, I haven't been actively thinking about this, because probably changing things up from what we've been used to for now 15 years would probably be a questionable step. Let me pause this before after the ad break. Twitch tells me ad starting soon. How am I supposed to work with this? Is there an ad? Doesn't seem to be an ad. Strange. Yeah, Bethesda asked while we are waiting for our ad break, what runs your Twitch bot? The bot that you see at the moment is based on stream elements. I'm using the standard commands and timers there. But I also built my own bot in Ruby and developed actual Ruby gems for that. Here we go. Here comes the ad break. But I can still keep talking to Balthazar, thanks to him being a subscriber. That needs to have its perks as well. There's a bot that I've built that can do a few things more than the stream elements one can. I'll have to dig that out again and see if it still works, because API changes and things like that might have happened since then. Yeah, that's also a project that could be quite fun to do on stream. That's why I started in the first place years ago. So yeah, there is a 10 eggs Ruby bot as well that I've built myself, and that can do a few more things. For example, it can save information, it can save state, so that makes quite a few more things possible than there are on Stream Elements and similar platforms. Bethesda says, I've worked with the Twitch.io Python module recently, which works pretty darn well. Yep. I'll have to look into things if there is a more modern Ruby gem for Twitch chat as well. When I started my project, I couldn't find any that was still maintained, so I built one myself based on the IRC interface to Twitch chat. That's something that I'll have to look into. So let's get back to the question at hand. Immutable Linux on the server. So I didn't consider it actively because I'm quite happy with my non-immutable Ubuntu at the moment. It works well. If at all we would, in the case that we would like to replace it, I would probably go into the direction of simply replacing it with Debian to be independent from an entity like Canonical. However, of course, these immutable distributions have their advantages as well. Well, do they have advantages on the server side? What are the advantages, just to catch everyone up? With these Immutable distributions, I'm not quite happy with the term immutable, because of course they are mutable. It's not like you lose all your changes when you reboot your machine, like it is in say development mode on the Steam Deck or something. It's just that they can't change their system state at runtime. They'll make all package upgrades and stuff in the background on a separate branch, basically, and only when you reboot these changes then take effect, which is awesome for a workstation, because if you install additional packages to the system setup, or if your system setup gets updates, they are done in the background. Eventually you reboot and then you'll get these updates, and you'll probably, hopefully, not even see any effects. Maybe there was an upgrade. Well, if there was an upgrade to your graphical desktop or something like that, of course you'll notice. But the great thing is, if after rebooting you realize that something is broken, you can simply reboot into the old state again and keep doing your stuff without being hampered in doing your work or anything. As I was, for example, when I got a Manjaro Linux upgrade, and then specific tools I needed on a day-to-day basis stopped working.
Get the subs in launch mode. We are at DEFCON 1. DEFCON
1. Togglebit, welcome. Hey, how you doing? Fellow long-haired IT person, how you doing? Hey, if you want, you can use the defend and the attack commands to see how our defenses hold up. But most of all, welcome. I hope you had a great stream, Togglebit. And feel free to tell us what you've been doing. So let me do a shout out for you. Thanks a lot for the raid. Cook and eat, of course. Have a great rest of your Good Friday. Have a good cooking and enjoy your meal. So far, I'm having a great time. I'm doing my office hour. For everyone who's just joined, hello, I'm Jochen, the Monospace mentor. I do online training in the DevOps space. I'm a veteran system administrator and software engineer, have been programming since 1984 and doing Linux stuff since 1993. And now I'm paying things forward back to the open source community by sharing what I know and what I've experienced over the decades. So if you have any questions, your timing is perfect, because this is my Friday office hour where I simply sit here and wait for questions to come in. So if you have any software engineering questions, system administration questions, stuff like that, feel free to post them to mspc.sh/office hour. That way I can field questions. They don't scroll off in chat. I can get them on screen so everyone can see what I'm talking about. And that's how this whole thing works today. So feel free to populate the board and I'll pick one question after the other. And you can even upvote questions if you like them particularly well. Let me see. The Master Leech asked in chat, do you like Vim or Emacs? I'm a Vim person. I did use Emacs in my early days in the 90s. Emacs was basically my operating system. I used it as an editor, of course, but also as my RSS reader, as my Usenet reader, as my email client. Over time, I switched to more graphical applications, and in the early 2000s, I actually switched to the whole macOS platform and used graphical applications there. And over time, I realized, okay, while I'm using Vim on my servers, I am the CTO of a small hosting company running hundreds of Linux servers. While I'm using VI on my servers to make quick changes, there seems to be so much more behind it, and I read about other people Vim setups and tried it out, and it stuck. So today NeoVim is my editor of choice and my IDE of choice. I'm even writing my courses and course materials in Vim, and I'm very happy about it. And if you'd like to see my Vim configuration, feel free to check out my dot files. You can find everything in there. At the moment, I'm answering the question that I assume was from Balthazar about immutable Linux on servers. I'm running an atomic or immutable, one of these new Linux distributions on my workstation here. I'm using Bluefin. And they asked, how about the server platform then? Balthazar, tell me that I'm wrong. So we are running our hosting platform on Ubuntu LTS because it's so convenient to have long-term support in terms of security updates and stuff like that. Eventually, of course, we have to upgrade, but the upgrade pace is really comfortable. Using an immutable Linux on the server doesn't have too many advantages that I can think of, actually, because upgrades don't apply until you reboot, while on Ubuntu you make upgrades and they apply immediately. However, at the pace we do standard upgrades, there's almost always a kernel upgrade in there as well, which requires us to reboot anyway. So I think on the daily operations side, it doesn't make too much of a difference if we are running Ubuntu or an immutable Linux distribution like, say, Fedora Silverblue. But where I can see myself using something like an immutable Linux distribution is in the cloud native space, because something like Talos Linux, for example, is definitely a great way to run infrastructure like Kubernetes. Talos Linux is not really a Linux distribution. It's really just the Linux, namely just the kernel that they are using to run their own orchestration API on top of. And then, of course, you have Kubernetes to deploy your actual payloads and your actual applications. So Talos Linux is really just a small layer between Kubernetes and the server hardware. And in that way, it's basically an immutable Linux. There's not even an SSH daemon, for example, to log into a Talos Linux machine because it's such thin of a layer. And I mean, CoreOS, Fedora CoreOS is something similar. Then there's Flatcar Linux, which is also pretty similar. So that's where I do see immutable Linux in my future, because we'll switch our hosting platform to something cloud native eventually. At the moment, we are running everything in a very conventional way of operations, but once we switch to something like Kubernetes, we'll definitely rethink our whole operating system strategy as well. And Balthazar says, that's honestly the kind of place I see immutable Linux at the server as well. Yeah, makes sense. And by the way, I do agree 100%. It's almost like we're good friends and colleagues now. Thanks for the question. Here's another one. Any opinion on OpenTelemetry and hosting your own OTel collector instances, specifically looking at the cost benefit of telemetry sampling to reduce cost and whether it's truly worth it? I think that's pretty much a standard economical question, because of course, it's this typical make versus build at below a specific limit of scale, buy is probably the most simple and cost-effective way to run things. Go with something like Victoria Metrics or Honeycomb or something like that, because these people know what they're doing. You can simply attach your applications and get your metrics out, or your whole telemetry out, and make it someone else's problem, basically. Of course, with growth, there will be a break-even point where it makes much more sense to run things yourself, and where it might even become unsustainable to pay someone else for it. Because if you're paying on a per host basis, for example, for us, it would be not affordable to use one of these external services with multiple hundred of Linux machines paying per host on a monthly or yearly basis. That's simply not in our budget. And at that scale, it makes, of course, more sense to run stuff ourselves. We run our own Prometheus instances. We integrate Prometheus exporters on all kinds of services, and connect everything to Grafana and get our dashboards and our analytics that way. And so I would think you simply will have to make this make versus buy decision. When you can afford to pay someone else to do that stuff, I can highly recommend to do so, because you can then focus on the stuff that your business is based on, actually. And I doubt that your business is based on telemetry. Telemetry is simply not required for you to operate your stuff. The great thing about OpenTelemetry is that it's, as the name implies, open, and so with OTel there is so much less vendor lock-in than it was with conventional metrics like Datadog, for example, as Balthazar just mentioned it, where once you go down that road, you might actually be tied to their agent, to their API. And once things get either very expensive, or you're not happy with them anymore for some reason, then it's really hard to switch providers or switch service providers. While with OpenTelemetry, this is much easier to do. It's not something you'll do overnight, I guess, but OTel makes it much more feasible to say, okay, we'll switch vendors and go to someone else with our metrics. Furusawa says, I am more tied to Datadog monitors and dashboards. The API I can replace rather easily. That's great to hear. Napalm says that one was me, and Datadog is the problem. The big issue I see with sampling, because I don't care about a large chunk of successful requests, except metrics for times, etc., is the complexity it introduces. OTel collectors is largely designed to run stateless and has limited options for load balancing or making sampling decisions across many replicas. Yeah, that really makes sense. It really depends on what kind of telemetry you'd like to collect, how much you're going, for how long you're going to store it. All these things factor in your decision, and yeah, it's not trivial, I think, because it really depends on your use case and on your requirements. That's why I'm saying something that you can really do with confidence is, I guess, go with OpenTelemetry. I stumble over that word. Word. Yeah, it's probably because I'm running out of I've run out of coffee. Yeah, OTel is definitely something that is a step in the right direction, and I guess I'd say go ahead and try it out. see how running hotel collectors yourself, how much effort it takes, how much you can automate it, how much of a pain in the butt it is, and if it actually saves you money in the long run. And of course, don't forget that the time that you spend on running these things yourself is a money value as well. But as I add, so the big thing around hotel collectors being based on Prometheus is that they are designed to be deployed alongside the application with many collectors in the infra. Yeah, it's basically very similar to Prometheus agents as well, or exporters as well. You'll run them either side by side to your application in a sidecar container, something like that, and then they grab your metrics and ship them to the collector. Ship them to the central collecting service, and so that of course adds a lot of overhead as well. That's why I mentioned automation, because yeah, that definitely should be automated in your CI/CD system or in some kind of an automation system that you use to make sure that collectors are deployed where you need to grab these metrics. Now Punkard says, oh, I went with the basic setup at the moment because they were sending everything as logs over to Datadog, i.e. traces and metrics and logs, which is the most expensive bucket. So just having the collectors classify things correctly might be good enough. Yeah, using them as filters or transformers to get a more easier to manage format, that does make sense as well. That might be actually a sweet spot where you use collectors just to transform your data in a way that's optimal, whatever optimal means in your case, and then use the services of someone else and pay for those. So cost reduction and making things more economical. That seems like a very sensible way to go about things. First now says, DD costs more money for sure, but we have other services that cost much more and give less value. Yeah, of course. That's why I say it's a valid dilemma to have. Do we go with make or do we go with buy? And now we've even introduced an in-between scenario. Even if it's expensive, it might be the right thing to do, but that's something that only you can decide. Armadon, thanks for the follow. Great Summoner asks, I don't know much about this topic, so what kind of useful data does OTel collect? It can collect all kinds of health and performance metrics. And I'm being generic intentionally because, yeah, it can be all kinds of stuff. It can be system level metrics like your current CPU load, how much your storage is used, your current network traffic, but it can also collect application-specific stuff. So if you have an application running on the web, for example, or as a microservice in a bigger architecture, you can collect all kinds of stuff. How many requests does my API endpoint serve? Which status codes does it respond with? Stuff like that. Things that you can analyze and make sense of in terms of either, is my service healthy, is everything within the parameters that we find normal, is the amount of error response codes higher than yesterday, or has the number of requests this week been significantly higher than last week. Stuff like that, where you can slice and dice numbers and get some business value out of it. That's what OpenTelemetry is for. Bethesda says, filtering is always a trade-off. I prefer to have a cheaper place as a raw log dumping ground like Greylog or Loki or ELK. Yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes you want to just dump your stuff unfiltered somewhere to basically have it available later if you realize you actually need it. But then you won't probably want to pay a lot of money for that indiscriminate storage. So having your own... I know this. Thank you for the follow, Great Summoner. That's very kind of you. Having something that you run yourself, like an ELK stack or a Greylog or Grafana Loki, something like that, makes much more sense. Foolish Novel says something with which I agree 100%. He says, I'm against building things that are not part of the core business we do. All those homegrown solutions will end up under-maintained. And that's my experience as well. I mean, we are... our team is a team of web operations experts. We could host all kinds of stuff ourselves, but our main product is our hosting platform. We are specialized in running high-performance websites based on Drupal and WordPress. Things like newspapers, magazines, big organizations, things like that. And so we try and focus on our hosting platform and not having to run all the stuff we need for our hosting platform ourselves. That's what I meant with this dilemma. In some cases, it might make sense to run it yourself, because even the operational overhead you're putting into running stuff yourself is still cheaper than paying someone else for it. But more often than not, other people running that specific service have the economies of scale to make you a very lucrative offer, as we do to our hosting customers, of course. We don't want our customers to do their hosting themselves, because we know we can do it better, we can do it more cost efficiently, and we can put innovations in that then we can spread across all our customers instead of just for one specific customer. And so our service makes sense, and it makes sense that our customers are paying us to do it for them. And the same applies, of course, recursively, basically, to all the little services that our whole business is based on. And so we will not run all the stuff ourselves, because it will draw away our attention from our main business product, and that's our hosting platform. Longer question by Bethesda. Good question. OTel is like Legos. It can collect anything. It's up to the application developer to expose metrics in the OTel API schema, or alternatively, exporters can be written to be the API glue between collectors and target systems. For instance, I have generic host collectors to grab the normal host metrics like disk space, CPU utilization, RAM pressure, etc. But my applications in my environment also expose metrics in OTel format for collectors to scrape. Yeah, that's basically the two sides of things. You have the more generic collectors that you can grab off the internet from GitHub or so, where they grab the stuff that everyone needs: CPU utilization, network traffic, even stuff like web server logs and stuff like that can be analyzed by these exporters, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel there. But of course, your own application that you're running on the internet is something individual, obviously. And so OTel also allows you to expose metrics that relate to this individual application, so that you get the high-level metrics as well. For example, if you're running an online game, you might want to track metrics: how many users are playing the game at the moment, how many of those players are in what specific level, connected to which of your realm servers or stuff like that. That's something where you export your own metrics in the generic OTel format. That way you can get these run-of-the-mill stuff like CPU load next to your user metrics as well, and get the real big picture how your, say, online game is running at any time. And Balthasar is in that space, adding, I wrote an exporter to integrate with Steam to track our game's CCUs, for example. Yeah, makes perfect sense. Pixel Buttercup joining us as well. Hello, Pixel Buttercup. Pixel Buttercup, by the way, just as Balthasar as well, are members of the server room. If you are interested in a friendly community of DevOps practitioners whose goal is to grow with each other, to help each other grow, then the server room is definitely something you should check out. The server room is an online community where not only you have access to a friendly forum where we can keep asking questions and answering them, we also have community events such as our monthly hangout or community workshops. I'm still planning on getting this little server over here running as our PubMox, as our public Proxmox server, where the community members have direct access to the Proxmox machine to run their own workloads, to do experiments, to make their exercises for the courses I give, stuff like that. And of course, the server room is also a good way for you to support all my teaching work. By getting a paid subscription, you can, of course, support all the stuff and get access to more perks. But there's also a free tier as well that you can use. So check out the serverroom.sh if you want to know more. Great Summoner says, thanks. What I find interesting is the difference between the information hotels can collect on server-side versus the information that can be collected on front-end side. Because there's all this fuss about cookies that have to be accepted first, but I never heard of limits on data collected on the server side. Not sure what the question is there. Maybe you'd like to elaborate how cookies and stuff relate to the metrics collection. Do you mean collecting user information might be subject to personal data regulations? Because yeah, that's definitely the case. So for example, if you collect metrics that are connected to an IP address in some jurisdictions, and I guess all across the EU because of GDPR, this is then classified as personally identifiable information, and therefore is subject to GDPR. So if you can store metrics independent of IP addresses, i.e. anonymized, that's going to be less hassle for you and everyone involved. All right, let's close these questions because there are a few more. Here's one. Would you mind to explain roughly how interactive websites work, such as online IDEs, online Linux environments, etc.? I'm not quite sure what you mean, because so before I go into this question, which is quite broad, let me clarify that this, do you mean basically how does GitHub code spaces work or something like that? I'll park these questions for the time being, and we'll get back to that. Simply tell me in chat if that was the intention of your question. And here's another question. Are you familiar with micro VMs like Firecracker, for example? If so, what's your take on them? I haven't checked them out myself yet. Stuff like Firecracker, or even regular VMs, but orchestrated via something like KubeVirt, looks like something that I might be interested in terms of our hosting platform, because scalability, of course, plays a huge role in running high-performance websites. But I haven't looked into or even experimented with micro VMs like Firecracker. I'll probably do so in the future, and at that point I will be able to answer your question much better than I can today. Hlitskjalf says interpreter on a website, I guess. So referring to the previous question, how interactive websites work, such as online IDEs. Let me try and give you at least a superficial answer here, because that's, as Balthazar says, a big question. In general, interactive websites of any kind, even if you can just enter stuff into an input form and submit it to the website, need, of course, server-side code that takes this information and does something with it, even if it's just storing it away. Online IDEs work the same way, basically, because they provide you with an editor. There is, of course, backend code that stores your code and does handle your login and stuff like that. But since these websites need to be highly interactive, meaning I want to type and see it on the screen at the same time without any delay and latency, a lot of stuff is executed on your client side, meaning in your browser based on JavaScript. That's why these websites will ship megabytes and megabytes of JavaScript code to your browser to be then executed on your own computer. This front-end code will only liaise with the backend server code to store stuff, to reflect changes and things like that. So that's why applications of that size will have teams of front-end developers on one side and teams of back-end developers on the other side, where it's more about databases and things, back-end storage and stuff like that. Online Linux environments then have additional complexity, because they need to run something like a Linux on the server side, where stuff gets executed and things like that. There needs to be an extra layer of stuff that actually spawns a VM, at least one of these micro VMs we've been talking about before, to execute your code and then maybe throw the VM away again for safety reasons or things like that. Applications like that, or platforms, I would say, are much more complex and require a lot of back-end logic and a lot of know-how to get it up and running. Those are probably stuff that will be quite challenging and require lots of experience, both on the front end, i.e. client side, and on the server side. Something that I definitely would have fun doing myself, but it's not something that I can do on the side, because it's going to be very time consuming. Here's an easier question. Favorite keyboard so far? I think my favorite keyboard at the moment is the one I have on my desk. Closely followed by one I have on my shelf back there. Let me show you the one that I have on my desk. It's an interesting format, because it's basically a TKL without the function row. So it has the separate cursor block on the side, and it has 5 function keys on the side as well. It doesn't have a full function row, as you can see, because I rarely use these function keys actually, but from time to time it's useful to have additional keys handy. And I do like the keyboard. It's a D70, that's what it's called. I like this format. I mostly use the alphanumeric keyboard, which of course I have in the HHKB format, because that's my favorite keyboard layout for monolithic keyboards. I don't actually use the separate cursor block very often, because I prefer to use the function key, to use my semicolon and single quote keys, for example, for cursor movement, so I don't have to move my fingers that much. But from time to time, it's actually useful to have dedicated arrow keys. Yeah, as Balthasar says, Vim motions everywhere. Sometimes it's actually useful to have dedicated arrow keys and not have to contort to use the cursor layer or something. For example, to simply up and down YouTube volume or something like that with a single hand. That's much easier. And then there's my new model F62, which is a buckling spring keyboard. Maybe let's get this out of the way. Actually, nope, that's not the one I wanted. Here. So that's my trusty buckling spring keyboard. Sometimes it's a little bit loud. I do use my other keyboards as well, of course. I rotate through them on a 1 week, 2 week basis or something like that. But most of the time I'm either using the D70, the F62, or one of my split keyboards, because I still enjoy typing on them a lot as well, and having them split shoulder width apart is definitely more comfortable than typing on a more cramped traditional keyboard. So yeah, I do have my favorites, but I do use all of them from time to time. Here's the inevitable editor question: Vim, Emacs, Nano, or any desktop IDE? I am a NeoVim user. That's my IDE. It has all the bells and whistles with LSP support and stuff like that. I don't need anything else, and works nicely for me, both for my infrastructure work as well as for my coding, even for writing my course materials like slide decks and things like that. I do use Vim for, because I use Reveal.js for my slide decks. It's just a markdown dialect that I can use to create slides, and my more extensive workshop prose is typed in NeoVim too. So yeah, that's my main editor, and more or less my only editor as well. Bethesda said, the reduction in loudness in switching to brown switches has been so nice. Yeah, sometimes I'd like to hear myself typing, sometimes I'd rather hear myself thinking, and that's when I switch the F62 for something else.
It's a unit system. I know this.
Hlitskjalf, that's probably some Nordic dialect, I guess. Thanks for the follow. The Masterlich says, I used to use Vim/NeoVim, but now I use Emacs. What? You are a traitor to the cause? Instant ban. No, just kidding. right, folks. So we've been going for a while, but I'm happy to go for another while if you like. Keep asking questions. Post them to mspc.sh/office hour, and I'll happily pick them up and try and answer them. So far, we got very, very good questions. I hate these headphones. I got them connected to my PC, but when I touch them, they start playing podcasts on my phone. That's so annoying, and it's not the only annoying thing. Those are Bose Quiet Comfort in-ear headphones, so they weren't cheap. And still they fall out of my ears all the time. And I realize that they're not even connected. How are they not connected to my phone and still trigger podcasts? No, they don't anymore. I have no idea what's going on. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Here we have an interesting, albeit very generic question. Can you recommend a roadmap for DevOps? What do you mean? Do you mean a specific course or something like that called Roadmap to DevOps? Something like Nana, for example, offers on YouTube. Yeah, that's definitely one way to go for things. But on the other hand, it really depends, because DevOps has become such a broad topic and maybe even diluted to being meaningless. It's hard to tell what you are actually aiming at. Maybe you'd like to be a little bit more specific in terms of how we can help you here. Happy to, but this is too broad to really answer in a useful way. Bethesda says, KDE Connect, GS Connect. Oh, that's actually... That is a good thought. I didn't think of that. I do have GS Connect set up. And you mean tapping my phones will go to my workstation, but then go across GS Connect to my phone and trigger the player there? Huh. That's something I have to investigate. That is actually plausible. I didn't think of that myself. Yeah, that's actually a good idea. All right, since I've long run out of coffee, I'll probably wrap things up around past. So, as they say here in Ireland, last orders, please. Post your questions to mspc.sh/office hour. If you don't want me to sit around here, just waiting. I'm very happy with the questions I've received so far. This has been a very productive session. Looking forward to next Friday. Hopefully I'll also have the motivation and energy to do another live stream. Usually I try to do live streams on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but lately I've fallen off the wagon there. Pixel Buttercup redeemed Hydrate. Thanks for caring for me. But since I don't have anything within reach, I would have to go downstairs to get something to drink, and I'll do that anyway once we've wrapped things up here. So I'll refund your Hydrate. And let you use it next time. Pixel Buttercup says, there's a lot of people today here. Yeah, I'm very happy about that too. That's thanks to Togglebit's raid. And it's good to see so many people interested in the whole DevOps shebang. That's also definitely going to be a boost for me to do another live stream next week, because yeah, sitting around dwindling numbers all the time is definitely a downer, even though I try to keep these thoughts away because they're not really healthy or useful. Oh, here's an interesting question. Do you have strong opinions on Rust being used in Linux? Yeah, one strong opinion is definitely some of the Linux maintainers are idiots. I did follow the whole Rust in a Linux debacle that's been unfolding a few weeks ago. And I think Linus stepped in too late back in a few weeks back, because by that point, when he took a perfectly reasonable stance, saying, hey, there's Rust and there's the traditional C stuff, and the maintainers on the C side of things don't have to care about Rust at all. If they want, they can, but they don't have to. The Rust people will do things themselves. But Rust is going to not to go anywhere soon. That was a perfectly sensible stance to take, and it would be mine as well. People saying, even though I'm not affected by the stuff the Rust people are doing, I'm still against it, and I don't want to see it, and I will basically torpedo it at any opportunity I get. That's just asshole behavior. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, no one's thrusting Rust on the established kernel maintainers who have been writing C code and will be writing C code. Behaving in that kind of a hostile manner just doesn't make any sense to me. Obviously, Rust has a place in system programming. That's what it was built for, and as far as I can tell, people like Linus and Greg Crow-Hartman have realized that Rust will be an improvement in terms of kernel development, and the way they are going about it makes perfect sense to keep them separate, not in a clean room way, but in a way where Rust doesn't impede the traditional C way of kernel development. That's a great thing, and I'm looking forward to see what it'll get us. It'll get us in a few years' time when things have matured a little bit more. So yeah, I am all for it. People like Linus and Greg can have far more ability to determine if it makes sense. Apparently it does. And so more power to the Rust people. And if an established developer in the Linux kernel space doesn't want to deal with Rust, they don't have to. So more power to them as well. Pixel says, okay, it's okay. It's a reminder to drink after you finish the stream. Yeah, I will. I can already feel my throat getting dry, so I will definitely get something to drink. But I don't want to take the necessary break to grab something. Grace, someone asks, sorry if you get this question too often. No question is getting asked too often. There are questions that are asked often, and that's because they are important questions that are relevant to a lot of people. So don't feel in any way afraid to ask questions, even if they might be frequently asked ones. But is there any specific Linux distribution you would recommend for a smart home server? No, I don't see the smart home use case to be too specific to warrant a specific Linux distribution. I would simply either use the Linux distribution that I'm most familiar with, or that's my favorite Linux distribution, and on the server that's still Ubuntu and or Debian. In my case, my smart home server actually runs Calf. Thank you for the follow. In my case, I'm running Home Assistant OS in a VM on my one of my servers here in the office. So it comes with its own Linux distribution. I'm not even sure what it's based on because I never have to deal with that. It's just a HAOS VM, and yeah, so that's not even something that I think about. Bethesda said the whole Rust isn't allowed to use my code interfaces in the kernel argument is abjectly hilarious and wrong. Yeah, 100% agree. We have another question on the board, and I'll keep going as long as there are questions on the board. I might have to grab a drink after all. What is your tip for people who are just starting their careers, half years of experience in this mess that AI is creating for all areas? Oh, I can feel you, I can feel you. Even though I'm far from that level of experience. But I see what you mean with the mess that AI is creating. Now. Let me put it this way. Someone needs to be there to clean up the mess that AI is creating at the moment. And so that's why I would recommend not getting deterred from the goal that you had when you started your career about half a year ago. You did want to get into something, into software engineering, into SRE, into DevOps or something like that. And I would say don't be afraid to pursue that further, even if people are loudly proclaiming the age of the developer is over, everything will be done by AI. I do not see that anytime soon. So we'll need people who can take all the crap that people have been vibe coding and to turn that into something useful or replace it with something useful. And so I would say keep gaining skills, keep learning, keep getting practical experience by doing stuff. Join the server room and get help with pursuing your goals. It will be worth it in the end because, yeah, all the AI stuff will help people to get stuff out quicker, but as myriads of people have been reporting by now, yeah, AI is helpful for me, but only because I do have experience, because I can separate the slop from the helpful stuff. So you'll need to have experience and skills to use AI, and should AI fall out of its hype cycle, which it probably will, I would say, we'll have to have people in there that can take up the slack and do stuff with skills, with a high level of experience, with a high level of knowledge. And so, there might be a hiring crisis at the moment because everyone, all the business people who have no idea what they're doing want to replace their staff with AI. This will greatly backfire, in my opinion, and they will be begging people to join them and clean up the mess that they've made. Let's do a technical question in between. How often do you install software from source? Do you have a particular way you like to manage your software packages? Yes, I do. But I just had an idea. Since we are going to have an ad in a minute's time anyway, I will take a short break, make a tea, and then I'll be back. That way I can actually use the ad time for something productive. And so bear with me, maybe add more questions to the board, feel free to do so. And I'll be back with a cup of tea. Pixel Buttercup will then be able to redeem their hydrate again, and we'll have a few more rounds of question and answers. This is going to be great fun. Thank you, guys. I'm back. I've made some tea. I've made space for tea. And we can get back to your questions. And thanks for the follow, the big girl. So, the question was, how often do you install software from source? Do you have a particular way you like to manage your software packages? I do not install software from source a lot anymore, except when the developers chose installing from source as the main way to get it. For example, some Rust applications and some Go applications are actually just distributed as source packages, and you need to cargo build or go build them yourself. But more often I install stuff from Homebrew. So if you are not familiar with my workstation setup, I use Bluefin, one of the distributions that use RPM OS tree for system packaging, which means you can't easily install additional packages to the running system, and it's not intended to be done in the first place. So most of the software that I install either comes from FlatHub in terms of for the graphical applications, or Homebrew for command line stuff. And Homebrew is a great distribution for command line applications, and most of the Rust or Go-based stuff is available there as well. So it's become very rare that I install software from source. There were times where this was different. I still am very familiar with the old way of doing stuff like /configure make and then make install. But thankfully that's not the case anymore. Yeah, I'm really getting dry in the throat, so hopefully it's already cooled down a little. Here's another question on the board. I recently got laid off. Sorry to hear that. Any tips on next steps? I'm thinking of building my own stuff before jumping into the next corporate job, but maybe that's only me feeling burnt out and I should start job seeking. I mean, I can feel you. I really can relate. And I think, even though it's a meme, I'd ask por qué no lo estás. I think both in combination would yield the best results for you. So start job seeking, because it's really a tough market out there and it'll take some time for you to find something, I'm afraid. But in the meantime, improve your skills and have fun at the same time by doing it in a directed way, meaning in the direction that you'd like to go into. Do something that you'd like to do. Do something that you would maybe do as a hobby. Self-hosting your own blog or your photo sharing service. Maybe run Nextcloud on a small VPS for hosting your photo collection and your calendar, stuff like that. Grab some open source software that is interesting, or if you are more into software engineering, build something that's fun. Grab a project that is fun to do. For me, for example, these enjoyable projects were stuff like the computer simulation that I've been building in Ruby, where I build a computer from NAND gates in software. So the first thing I built was a NAND gate object or class, and from there I went and combined NAND gates in all kinds of ways to get, for example, a an 8-bit memory cell, to get a flip-flop, to get other stuff. And seeing these things working together and actually producing the expected results is a lot of fun. Another thing that I built myself was a visualization of network requests, HTTP requests, by using Ruby, Dragon Ruby, a game development framework, to visualize how requests are sent from one host to the other, how a load balancer then spreads them out between different target servers and stuff like that. Seeing that stuff animate on screen in a way that I can actually use in my courses to visualize how a reverse proxy works or things like that. That was really, really fun. And that's something that I would even do if it wasn't relevant for my day job or for my future day job in that case. Fight the burnout by doing something that's fun, while making sure that you will be able to sustain yourself in the long term, I think is probably going to be the best road to take. And don't do it alone. Get someone who you enjoy working with, and who can be an accountability buddy to keep you on track and not lose motivation and drive, things like that. And I'm not only referring to the server room, my own online community there. If you have more questions on details like that, feel free to keep asking. In the meantime, let me catch up with chat. Bethesda said, if you're deploying virtual machines on something like Proxmox, Incus, then yeah, Home Assistant OS is great. That's what I did, yeah. I'm running Home Assistant OS on Proxmox. However, nothing stops you from installing Home Assistant or other smart home systems on bare metal or in a container. Yep, definitely. And oftentimes, these smart home systems even come with pre-built containers that you can simply download the image for and run yourself. Bethesda goes on to say, if you're new to running home servers in general, you might consider using tooling that's really great for exploring and running apps like CasaOS or Unraid. Yeah, definitely. Lowering the barrier to entry there can be quite beneficial. Yeah, Unraid or something like Portainer, for example, which makes handling containers a lot more easy because you have a whole GUI for it. Maybe something like TrueNAS, if you want to build your own storage server, because TrueNAS also is able to run containers or even VMs in a graphical manner. Yeah, that's definitely something. Fulesnabel threw in Revision Demo Party is streaming now, so when you're already here, I recommend checking it out. I will look into Revision. That's great, being able to attend that live. Of course I will, even though I'm not sure what... Yeah, the weather is definitely not going to pull me outside. I see rain running down my window here. So that looks like the ideal time, the ideal way to spend my time. Bethesda also responded to the previous question. One thing that I find super valuable in between jobs is the ability to work on things that I haven't had time to focus on before. Oftentimes it comes up in a conversation during interview time and becomes valuable to me as a talking point towards getting me hired. Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, actually. I didn't make that as clear in my previous response. Of course, doing something that's fun for you is a great way to make progress in terms of your skills and stuff. And fighting burnout in the process. But of course you can also do it in a more directed way by doing something where you can actually reference it in a future interview, in a future application, where you can say, yeah, not only have I gained this experience in my previous jobs, but I also did this stuff in my own time, and here's how I can connect what I did to what I'm going to do for you as my future employer. That definitely is something that is time well spent. Pixel Buttercup recommended never stop learning and build things that are important to you, relevant to the job you are working for, but also, and more important, relevant to you. I couldn't say it better myself. Good point by Balthazar as well. Even if it's not super relevant to the job, the story talks about your process of how you learn, which is super relevant during interviews. Yeah, people want to know, how will you acquire new skills? I mean, I can see from your CV that you have experience in this space, and you're telling me as well, but we have super specific stuff that not everyone might know. So how will you be able to acquire the knowledge to do our super specific stuff that no one has invented anywhere else, of which we are very proud, and all that stuff. So interviewers will want to hear how you will even be able to increase your skills, even if you have the most impressive of skill set to start with. They will expect you to broaden it, to deepen it, and being able to tell them, and that's my modus operandi, how I will acquire the skills necessary, how I will learn your secret sauce and turn it into business success. That's something that you want to be able to point out during an interview. Kav said, one thing I find really sad since I started studying and in college is that people always say not to reinvent the wheel, but I think it's horrible to have to accept that I can only upload my application to Vercel or some cloud instead of trying to build my own VPS. And sometimes even something simpler, like the sense of community, of creating something cool for everyone. But it seems like everything has just become about money for a few years now. Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, that's capitalism for you. But you're making a good point, to which I agree. Stuff, as at least in the mainstream of corporations and tech companies, has become very specific. Sometimes it seems hard to break out of that mold. If you're not doing Vercel, if you're not doing React, if you're not doing TypeScript or stuff like that. But I think that might just be short-sightedness, because there is so much more stuff out there, and it just depends on where you look. There are so many companies that do interesting stuff, that do wild stuff, that use non-mainstream stuff like Ruby on Rails or conventional configuration management automation like we do for our hosting platform. We still use Chef as we did back in 2010 because it works for us, and it's of course hard to replace when it's become the heart of your operation. So there are companies around that will look for someone who is not a cookie cutter developer or engineer, and just keep widening your view in this case. And you mentioned community. I think community is a great resource. If you have connections, if you have a network, reach out to people and ask them if there is a company they know is hiring, if there is a company they can recommend, if there is a company that they will tell you you could be a good fit for. those are the connections that you can really use to your advantage. Bethesda said, to counter the wisdom of just use Vercel, Vercel reinvented the wheel themselves. The old wheel was self-deploying on a server. If someone tells you not to, don't reinvent the wheel, that should be more ammo to self-host, not less. True words. I mean, and Vercel didn't invent that particular wheel either. I mean, before them there was Heroku and other companies that did platform as a service. That doesn't mean that the old ways of running your own VPS are outdated or unusable anymore. I think it's the actual opposite. I think there is a renaissance of hosting it yourself. In the Ruby space, for example, Kamal has become an interesting way to, and a popular way to deploy Rails applications on your own VPS instead of paying a lot of money to Heroku to do the same thing. So I think in 5 years' time, there will actually have been a resurgence of either running stuff on-premise if you are a bigger company, where you take stuff out of the cloud, because running it yourself is not only cheaper, but also it makes it much easier to comply with regulations and stuff like that. Or maybe even becoming independent from US tech companies. So those are skills that will be sought after in a few years' time. That's my prediction there. And I can't agree more with Balthasar there when he says, no, it's a great example. Oftentimes when people say don't reinvent the wheel, what they're really saying is don't rock the boat. They have a process they use to do a thing and aren't interested in changing, so someone else introducing change, that's something scary for them. And I also agree with Pixel Buttercup, who says VPS is cheaper and more fun to set up. Yeah. And oftentimes, and increasingly so, it's not more effort either, because there are so many tools now that can take the maintenance load off you. Stuff like Portainer, for example, where you don't have to memorize Docker commands or stuff like that, where you can simply say, okay, I want to run this image in these many replicas and do the thing. And now you're hosting stuff on your own. You have control over the resources. You can add resources if need be, but you don't have to. You don't have to pay through the nose for services that are actually easy to run yourself. Hey, sorry Dev, how you doing? So Dev joining us saying, I've heard it said that companies should not develop software to run their own company. Outsource that to someone who can take care of it better and focus on the service you are selling. Yeah, that resonates with something that Full Snabel said earlier, where you really need to focus on your own business goal and not, work on the business, not in the business, basically. Spend time with the stuff that makes you money, not the tools you use to make money. A carpenter will not build their own plane, for example. They will buy a plane from the tool shop that's pre-sharpened and that will work for years, and then they use that plane to smoothen the boards that they will build stuff out of. If you are a carpenter who needs dozens of planes, new planes every day, you might want to have a little plane factory on the side. That's when make makes more sense than buy, and we've covered that earlier in this session. SolidDev is definitely right. Focus on the stuff that makes you money, not on the tools you use to make that money. Pixel Buttercup says there's a really good video from Dreams of Code about setting up a production-ready VPS. It's not as hard as most people think. No, it's not. Thinder joining us as well. Yeah, Foolsnobble was around. I'm not sure if you lost him, but he's been around. How are you doing? How is everyone? This was supposed an office hour, but we've been going for 2 hours now, to the minute at the moment. I still have my second cup of coffee, of tea in this case, ready. So yeah, I'm doing great and having a lot of fun answering people's questions. Because this is me office hour. Keep them coming. Post them to mspc.sh/office hour. I'll be happy to answer them. There is a new question that just popped up on screen, so let's get it here. How do you take notes? That's a great question, and I'm always happy to talk about this. I use Obsidian to take my notes, it's just Obsidian because it's really a great application to maintain Markdown files. With the whole plugin ecosystem, you can do a lot of stuff that other Markdown-based tools can't. And so I'm more than happy to pay for an Obsidian license, for a commercial license actually, and also for Obsidian Publish, because I also maintain my tech notes separately, and I do publish them via Obsidian Publish. So if you go to wiki.monospacementor.com, you get all my tech notes that I'm mostly using myself, but I think they can also be useful for others, and that's why I'm publishing them online. If you have, so if there's anything that you're looking for, maybe my wiki has stuff on it. Or if there's something that you think should belong in there, maybe I'll write a note about it. I did try different ways to take notes, especially if it's about quick notes and things like that. For example, I do have my e-ink tablet that I can use for myself, or that I can also use to write stuff on the screen here. Wait, that was the wrong button. That's what I meant. So let's say hello to Thindel here. It's lost the connection. Interesting. Give me just a second. Yeah, that's because it fell asleep. Start sharing again. And I probably have to refresh my browser source here. There we go. So yeah, having something like that is definitely helpful as well. Sometimes I use it to manually write down ideas because it simplifies the ideation process while I'm writing stuff down. But most of the permanent notes I take will end up in Obsidian, either in my personal vault or in the public Monospace Mentor vault. Thinder says I take notes with a pen on my Surface Pro using OneNote. Okay, that's also a good solution, yeah. The tablet that I'm using is a Boox Go 10.3, BOOX, and it's an Android-based tablet, so I can also install stuff like Obsidian on it. But of course, its ability to read books, read PDF files, and write handwritten notes and hand-drawn images. It's a really great in-between. Balthazar needs to run a couple errands. No worries. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for all your contributions. And of course, thanks for your subscription as well. All right, here's the next question. JSON versus YAML versus TOML. If you could choose one for all config files, which one would you choose? That's actually an interesting topic that I just earlier this week covered in the server room in our community forum. So if this is something that interests you, you can get a free account there and simply read my post there. But you can also get a paid subscription, which not only supports me and my teaching work, it also gives you lots of perks like the community events we are running and workshops and courses and all that kind of stuff. In that post on the server room, I actually highlighted two tools that I didn't know before, and that's Shell and JSONet. Those are both basically programming languages that output configuration file formats like JSON or YAML. And so if you have to maintain stuff in these formats, it might actually make sense to use an abstraction like JSONet to then generate these files for you, because they allow you to add a lot more logic than the traditional, more static formats like YAML allow you to. And so if I had to choose one for all my config files, I would probably choose, is it Shell? Or is my memory failing me here? Let me see. Let's go to community.monospacementor.com. No, dal. Yeah, of course. I should think of Indian food there. So let me post the links in chat, since we are already at it. So it's dal and JSONet. Apparently there are a lot of language bindings for dal as well. So there are libraries for Ruby, for Go, and other programming languages. So you can actually use dal as your first level configuration format without having to transform it into something like JSON or YAML, which looks pretty interesting to me. But other than that, and if it's just between the three that you mentioned, I would probably use JSON, just like Thindle would do too. JSON is more machine readable. It's more strict than YAML, even though I really don't like that I can't end the last list item with a comma. Maybe TOML could be something that relieves that pain, but I guess I'm definitely veering towards JSON as well. Eduardo joining us, welcome, asking, have you ever needed to upgrade a legacy Java Enterprise Edition project to use Maven? No, thankfully I have not. After a long period of time in which I've been specializing on Perl, I was looking for something that would make web development easier, more efficient, and I did look at Java EE back in the day, but when I started actually trying to build something, I realized, no, that's definitely not more efficient. It might be more powerful with all the Java beans and stuff, but more efficient? No, it's not. And shortly after that, I found Ruby, because I started using Chef as my infrastructure automation software, and that solved all my development needs for the time being. And so I've never got into Java more than ankle deep. but having to upgrade a legacy Java Enterprise Edition project to use Maven sounds like a pain. Thinter says, YAML and TOML make scoping, objects, array elements, etc. too hard to read. Although I'm weird, I never have had any problems with XML or with SOAP. SOAP plus tooling was awesome. You are weird. You are weird, my friend. I did deal a lot with XML when I did my writing in DocBook. There was a time when I actually wrote course manuals and stuff in DocBook, but I don't see myself going back there anymore. Stephen Everts joining us. Good day. Good day to you. Welcome to my office hour. What's an office hour, you ask? Well, my office hour is when I simply sit here, sip tea, and wait for questions to come in. And then I try to answer them. I would ask you to post your questions to mspc.sh/office hour, because there I can collect them easier and they won't scroll off like in chat and things like that. Thindel says, well, you could have had to make it using LaTeX. So, where is it? Is it up there now? Ah, here it is. This is a book about Perl. Actually, a complete course about Perl, a Perl course. And guess who wrote that book? In LaTeX. I'll give you a hint. How was it? It was fun. I mean, of course, I had to get familiar with the syntax and stuff. But the syntax is not that bad. And once you got all your styles and stuff in place, it's simply about writing. But then being able to insert images, diagrams, code blocks and stuff in a very easy way and see it typeset so nicely is definitely rewarding. So yeah, there's a lot of effort that goes into becoming fluent with LaTeX and to really become efficient in writing your actual document. But once you're there, it's really great. I would go back to that. And if I wasn't doing online courses now, where I don't have to hand out a book in person, and now I can simply write my stuff in Markdown and have it rendered in HTML, I would definitely go back to writing LaTeX. Eduardo understood Latin. Yeah, I do understand Latin as well. I had 8 years of Latin in school, and I still occasionally read the old Stoic philosophers. But no, I did not write a Perl book in Latin. That would be really out of this world. That would be, yeah. That thought alone is going to make me giggle for the rest of this day. No, it's LaTeX. That's actually how the X is pronounced in Greek. Here's another question on the board. The question keep coming, and hey, as long as they keep coming, I keep going. I work on maintaining legacy GTK apps. Are you aware of any testing automation tools for desktop applications on Linux? There doesn't seem to be much in this space. I'm sorry, I don't know, because yeah, application development has never been my thing. However, I'm surprised to hear that there's not much testing automation tools, especially for something well established as GTK. I mean, you say legacy GTK, so is it GTK 2 or 3 or something? Maybe the current automation tools, I would assume, exist. It's just an assumption, I'll admit. Maybe they've just been built for the latest version, where there's definitely a resurgence of applications being built for GNOME and things like that. But I'm surprised, because testing has been around in development now and has been a mainstay for developers for more than a decade now, for 2 decades basically. And so that's why I'm surprised to hear that for GUI application development there aren't almost any testing automation tools. That sounds strange. But hey, as I said, I'm not familiar with the space. So sorry, can't help you there. But I guess as a side comment, I think we definitely do need more tools in that space. Not only for general testing, but also for stuff like accessibility testing, because users with disabilities are still sidelined in the application development space. Applications that don't really support screen readers, that don't support any other accessibility helpers. I think the whole ecosystem would benefit greatly from tooling that could make sure and tell you, yeah, that dialogue does work, but only for people who are sighted, and you are missing these elements to actually make a screen reader make sense of your dialogue or something like that. So that's definitely something where we could use more tooling and stuff. Calf said, my teacher uses LaTeX too. To do lessons, they say it's possible to know if the person cheated or not. Wait, what do they mean if it's possible? Does he have you write your submissions in LaTeX too? Tinder says, I spent a summer in the as the maintainer / feature developer for a web shop built in Perl in a single file, a single 8K line file. Oh dear God. Perl or not, that's not fun. That's really not fun. Even though Perl has so many great features to build maintainable software. If you said that I had to go back to writing Perl instead of Ruby or Go, as I've now started to learn, happy to report I finally started getting into Go. If you told me I had to go back to Perl, I don't think I'd be too sad. There are worse fates than that. Thindel also said it's hard to build accessible applications when you have no personal need for it, so it's an afterthought. Yeah, and that's why I say we need tooling that actually reminds people, yeah, you might be able to deal with this dialogue without any problems, but there are people who won't. They also said, I learned a lot of regex that summer, I can't imagine. But Perl is a great way to deal with regex. I'd rather not go back to Perl? Well, I can imagine that you'd rather not go back to that kind of Perl. And if someone wrote a Ruby application that way, I wouldn't want to go to that kind of Ruby either. But in both cases, there are much better ways to write maintainable software. There's actually always better ways to write maintainable software. When I explored historic operating systems, for example, for the PDP-11, like the replica that's behind me, where do I have to shift? Here. That blinking light thing is a PDP-11, actually a replica of one, and I ran one of its original operating systems simply to learn how those worked. I discovered that the BASIC that they had around in the late 80s had great ways to write modular programs to even deal with very limited RAM space of, say, 64 kilobytes, where you could write basic modules that could page in different modules just to page back to the other module and things like that. So even back in the end of the 80s, programming languages were built for modularity, for separating separating stuff, and build stuff that is easy to maintain in the long run. For some reason, some people never learned that or forgot about it and basically regressed to something unmaintainable as, say, an 8,000 line Perl file for a web shop. Here we have a question. Have you ever experienced an attack on a system you managed? No. Why? Yes, of course. Different kinds of attacks, actually. So one of the less flattering attacks would certainly be something where I or our team left services running without updates for too long a time. And we only realized when we noticed that system load was through the roof, and we found a Bitcoin miner running on the same machine. Mistakes like that happen everywhere, and they definitely happen to us too. But we also had to mitigate DDoS attacks on our platform because some of our customers are more of the leftist or anti-fascist nature, and so they do get attacked from the internet. And we had DDoS attacks with thousands of requests to a particular website per minute, and had to find ways to deal with that. In some ways, we were quite successful by using the performance of our platform to our advantage. So since we are, for example, running Varnish as our caching proxy, we were able to simply weather one attack by serving only cached requests or cached responses. So the website stayed up all the time, and we served thousands of requests per minute, hundreds of requests per second from the memory-based cache. And at one point, the attacker simply lost steam and stopped attacking us. In other cases, we had to disable part of the website functionality, stuff that is expensive, that is related, or that needs to do database requests and stuff like that. We simply couldn't keep that running, so we kept the application running in more of a skeleton way, with basic features intact, but maybe content search disabled or something like that, the more expensive stuff that we couldn't sustain. So yeah, as an operator of a managed hosting platform, we definitely have seen our share of attacks, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Quite the opposite, because nowadays AI bots are becoming attacks themselves, because for some reason those AI platforms keep crawling websites and requesting the same content several times per second, but with different query parameters and stuff that prevents caching. Even if these query parameters don't make any sense. So for example, let's make a simple example. They request a list of articles from article 1, the next 20 articles. Then they request a 20 article list starting with article 2. Then they request a list of articles starting with article 3. So they are completely nonsensical, but put a lot of load on web applications. And so we have to classify these AI bots as attacks as well, because we need to mitigate them in the same way as we would a DDoS attack. And that's actually not really easy as well, because they employ the same patterns as distributed denial of service attacks. They use a huge range of IP addresses. In one case, for example, you could really see how they use ascending IP addresses. 123.4, 123.5, 123.6, 123.7, and so on. Each request had its own individual IP address, and they kept going through IP addresses and sending their requests that way. Other AI bots seem to be using residential IP address spaces, IPs that don't belong, say, to the Amazon Web Services address space, or some other provider's one, but residential addresses, either from, I would have to assume, are actual botnets, or what I read today is that there are companies actually that pay mobile application developers to add their AI bot endpoints to their mobile applications, so that if you install that application on your phone, it becomes an endpoint for an AI bot, and your phone then becomes the source of these AI bot requests. And that's of course shady as fuck as well, and that needs to be regulated or punished some way, because that's really terrible. And yeah, so that's basically our daily business, dealing with actual malicious attacks and dealing with traffic that basically amounts to attacks. If you have more detailed questions, keep asking them. Thindal asks, obscure operating system, has anyone here actually tried Temple OS, ignoring the issues that the creator had? No, that seems to be... That's a very niche thing that I didn't get into. And yeah, the creator of Temple OS is also questionable in my book. I think this is not quite a successful attack, but if you track 404s, you'll get so many failed hits to /WP admin, even if you don't even use PHP. Yeah, we see that too. Of course, logs always have these entries where They go to /wp admin, /php admin, stuff like that. Even things that aren't PHP based, where they try to get the, it might be vulnerable endpoints in Microsoft SharePoint and other stuff. But those are easy to deal with, and those are comparably few and far between. The amount of AI bot requests that go around is really something else on a different order of magnitude. It says he had some pretty bad mental health issues. Oh, am I confusing the author there? Sad to hear. Yeah, mental health is such an issue. It looks like I confused him with someone else. Anyway. If you have still questions about DevOps, system administration, Linux administration, please don't ask me about Windows administration, software engineering, IT career, stuff like that. Post them to mspc.sh/office hour. Because that's what we are doing here. If not, I'll wrap up this office hour that has become 2.5 office hours and a lot of fun, thanks to your questions. Now you're just trying to keep me up, right? What's your favorite wrap? I like chicken pesto. I'm vegetarian, so it won't be chicken pesto, but hey, I'll always take something like a tofu wrap or a falafel wrap, for example. That's definitely something that's up my alley. All right, Twitch is telling me that in about 2 minutes time we'll have another ad break, and that's where I'll wrap things up if we don't get any more DevOps questions. Oh no, let's work with a real deadline, shall we? In 2 minutes time we'll wrap things up, so you'll be able to get 1 or 2 more questions in if I keep things short. Sindel says, good falafel is really good. Average falafel is terrible. Yeah, I'd agree. I see. My attempts at pressuring you on a Friday afternoon are going to fail. Good on you. Don't let you get yourself pressured. Oh! Here's another question. Might be a little bit too deep for 1 more minute. But let's see. From someone who doesn't know anything about Linux hosting, how would you host multiple websites on a single server? I keep hearing Nginx, but isn't that just a HTTP router? No, it's an actual web server. Just like Apache. And with these web servers, you can actually run multiple websites on the same address, because then they'll distinguish things by the host name that comes with the actual HTTP request. So in the early days, Apache, for example, couldn't run multiple websites on the same IP address because the IP address was the distinguishing factor. But then they added the host header, where you could actually set the domain name inside the HTTP request itself. And from that, then Nginx and Apache can tell for which website, for which virtual host the request is meant. And now we are still running the ad, and of course I didn't factor in that I'd have to say bye and thank everyone, so I will actually still wait until the ad has run so we can sign off properly. Cuff says that is really fun. I'm going to the gym. I don't know what time it is for you guys because I'm from Brazil, but it was a good morning. Thanks. Thank you for stopping by and for following. It's been a lot of fun answering your questions. So here goes the ad. It's Mezah says, thanks. Thank you for stopping by. Thankful for everyone who's watching. Waiting for the ad to end. Kim says, have a wonderful evening, you too, and have a great Easter weekend as well. Hopefully it's going to be a long weekend for you. Appreciate you spending time with us. You're going to have to work over the weekend? All right, Twitch says, I'm back, and yeah, I did not take into account that I would have to and would want to sign off properly, so I had to wait until the ad was over. And yeah, thank you for this great office hour. I had a lot of fun. Thanks for staying here, asking questions, engaging in chat. Thanks to Togglebyte for sending all his viewers over. Many of you have been staying. Thank you for that. Don't forget to follow the channel so you'll get notified when I'm back, which is definitely going to be next Friday for another office hour, but hopefully also for one or two more live coding sessions on Tuesday and Thursday. I'll be off into the weekend myself. I have Monday off because it's a holiday. I have Friday off because it's the last Friday in the month. And all our team has the last Friday of the month off. And I've taken off Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday as well. So I'm going to be able to relax and recover next week, which doesn't mean that I'm not going to do any live coding streams, because as we all know, live coding is also recovery and fun. And so I'm optimistic that we'll see each other. Thanks for staying here today, and I hope to see you next week. Until then, take care.
you.